Good afternoon, you handsome lot. Well, it's an absolutely beautiful afternoon. We've got a 2013 Vauxhall Adam behind me, which is very, very poorly and could have caused a very serious accident. And to fix this vehicle, we need something that's in that box. I'm going to show you what's available in this vehicle. Now, I've had to be able to get it on my ramp because it was brought to us on a flatbed. Put a ratchet strap from one side to the lower suspension arm, and it's actually snapped. The subframe's rotten. I just release this bottom arm now. Let me release it. Let me unhook it. Can I get me bar? I'll get me bar and just show you exactly how bad it is and how bad it's gone. Look at that. That is absolutely horrendous. Let's get involved and get this car back on the road. Now, because we need to remove the subframe, what we're going to do, come inside the vehicle and disconnect the lower steering column joints with two E14s. Now, once you've undone your two E14s, get your seat belt now and put it straight through the steering wheel, like so, and couple it up. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, why don't you use the steering lock? Well, just in case I need to put the ignition on this car for some unknown reason. Anyway, as I was saying, just in case I need to put the ignition on for some unknown reason, it's not going to damage the clock spring for the airbag around there. But once you've done that, we can come ahead now, and that arm should lift up, so slide like that, and that UJ will just pop off. Now I'm outside the vehicle and we've got it half raised. Now, when this bottom arm, well, subframe has failed, the wheel has come back, and it has caught the wheel arch, the wing. We're going to have to try and do something with that. See if we can try and bend it and straighten it. But we need to get, oh, hang on, we need a shock absorber as well. It's burst. Yeah, we need to get this wheel off. Yeah, let's get the wheel off. Right, now with both front wheels off, what we're going to do is grab our little, where's it gone? Wire brush, and we're going to give all the fixtures, like anti-roll bar links and tracker ends, a little bit of a clean, and then we're going to give them a good coating of Launch Power Loop Plus. Make sure everything's spotless. Makes the job so much easier. Right, with everything now disconnected, we've gone ahead and removed the lower suspension arms. Well, that one's rotten, it's pretty much fallen out. Now I need to move round to these exhausts, but let me flip this camera around so you can see. We've got to remove the exhaust because the subframe's going over it. So these three bolts here, they are absolutely corroded. So I don't know how I'm going to approach them. I might just put the zipper disc down them and smash them out. I don't know, but they are quite bad. I'm sure we'll work our way around them. Right, now regarding these crusty nuts, what we've done, got myself a little air chisel, and what we've done at the side, we've gone brrr, brrr, and anyway it's vibrated and it's shocked it loose, and we have got a pair of more grips on it, and that nut is now turning. We're going to repeat that process on that one there as well, and that one pretty much as soon as I put the air chisel on it, it crumbled to bits. Right, now as you can see, we've got that exhaust now off the downpipe. Now we need to move around. Now on these, if you're not familiar with them, that the gear lever, the gear linkage, is actually connected to the subframe, and we just have to separate it by there with a little clip that you've got to pick off, and then that top half of the, I'll show you, the top half of the gear selector will just wiggle loose. Now be careful when you're dropping it down. Right, with everything now hanging loose, we've undone all the bolts from the subframe to the chassis. Now it is in halves, the front half and the rear half. Now we're not touching the front piece of it because all the fan pack is connected to it. We don't really want to disturb it. We've undone the two bolts. Give it a smashing with a hammer and it will slide off. We might have to use a little bit of penetrating fluid so it slides off because the aluminium does corrode. We're going to clean this up, obviously when we refit it. We're going to be using a little bit of greaseroonie. Right, let's get this subframe off. And just like that, we have now got that subframe off and it is resting on my bench because it's going to make things a little bit easier for me to swap everything over. Now, if you can see that now, look at the extent that it's rotten. That's bad, that is. Right, I have got two new bottom arms to go on this subframe. we need to go ahead and get all the steering rack and the gearbox, the gear selector pivot point removed. There's lots of little bits that we need to take off, but before we do, we're going to just get our wire brush and go around all the fixtures, give them a good clean and a good coating of Launch Power Lube Plus, so we're not snapping anything. And there we go, that is one subframe now removed. I've had to use the nuts and bolts out of the lower suspension arms, and everything there is nicely laid out. And I get this swapped over now and get the brand new one on the bench. Right, now with that brand new subframe on the bench, now I've put the first one in the subframe, the first bottom arm in the subframe. I'll tell you what, it's so much easier when these are off. Now every single nut and bolt that I fit onto the subframe is going to get a dip in of copper grease. Right, now before I plod on doing everything, what I'm going to do is chuck everything into a little bit of a time lapse for you. And there you have it, just like that, that subframe now is built back up. We're going to get it back into the car, but before we do, where that subframe slides onto the front half, we're going to clean this part up here so it slides nice and easy. Right, now everything is now cleaned down. What I've done is put a little bit of red rubber grease where the two fascias are going to fit together, because I have known it when I've done subframes before now. It's obviously because you're putting a new part against an old part, they can creak kind of thing. So yeah, a little bit of prevention saves sticking it all back down. Oh, it just kicked me right over. Spin it back over so you can see. And also, before we offer it up, the shaft that the gear selector slides into, we also put some red rubber grease so it slides in nice and simple. Right, well, I've now got that subframe back in place, as you can see. Now, this little rubber cover here that goes on the steering rack, the amount of steering racks that I've changed over the years, this is no word of a lie, where I've put the steering racks on and I've looked and I've gone, oh no, I forgot to put that little rubber thing on. But yeah, we're going to go ahead now and get this subframe bolted up to the chassis. But before we do, all the nuts and bolts, let me flip it around, all the nuts and bolts, we're going to get them covered in anti-seize copper grease. Right, well, that subframe now is back bolted to the chassis and everything is nice and tight. Oxygen sensor plugged back in, everything. Now, I have put 3 new nuts on the exhaust pipe, obviously, because they were rotten. Now, I have run into a little bit of a problem, and you're probably wondering why I've got the suspension arm too light. Now, with this corroded and pulling out, it's obviously pulled the dry shaft out of the gearbox. And I was like, oh, you know, yeah, we can just slide that back in, not a problem. Now, I've never, ever seen this in a month of Sundays. Now, I don't know if I can focus. I've tried for about 10 minutes, hence why I've had to get this suspension arm with the pipe pickler. Absolutely brilliant tool, game changer. This is why I've had to pull the shaft out of the hub and pull it out of the way. Have a look at the dry shaft itself. Can I zoom? See the splines? You might not be able to see it, but they have actually, this outer part of the shaft here has actually spun. So as I'm trying to push it back in, it's not aligning up properly. So it's going to have a brand new shaft. But while we're waiting for the new one to turn up, which shouldn't be too long, I'm going to go ahead, drop the car down, and we're going to get this shock absorber replaced. Right, and there we have, just like that, with a little bit of magic, that is one shock absorber off. Let's go and get it in the spring compressor. Right, well, I've already pulled the old shock absorber off and we fitted the brand new one. And I tell you what, the Sykes Pickering coil spring compressor is an absolute game changer. But yeah, right, let's get this strut now back on the vehicle. Well, it didn't take too long until the brand new dry shaft has turned up. Now always check them, make sure they are the correct length. Now before we get it fitted into the car, well, into the hub should I say, I'm going to coat these splines that go through the hub with some lovely copper greaseroonie prevention. We like it because at some point in its life that may need to come back out. If it's got copper grease on it, it's just going to fall out. Now a little tip for you when you're inserting these into the gearbox, the little snap rings that go on the end, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, there you go. Make sure that the opening is at the bottom, so when it slides in, it's going to slide in nice and easy. But if it goes upside down, can you see what you're up against? That ring isn't going to go in. A little tip for you there. Right, after a little bit of time now, this car is all back together. All I've got to do is put the wheels back on it, drop it down and connect the steering column. But I've got a little bit of a special guest. We got Big Mike here from launch with some goodies. Right, I'm going to put these wheels on. Right, well them wheels now are back on the vehicle. If you have a look. Now to make it a little bit easier for yourself to connect that steering column, make sure that both front wheels are in a straight ahead position. Now we can drop it down and get it all connected. Right, we've jumped back in the car now and we've connected that steering column joint at the bottom there, made sure everything's tight. But before we start the car up, we're going to go full lock, left to right, and make sure that everything is nice and smooth and there's no restrictions there. Put the wheels back to central, perfect. And if we can get it off the ramp and torque wheels up. And there we go, that car is now all boxed off apart from the tracking on it. Now the simple reason, because we haven't disturbed the geometry of the steering rack, we have moved the subframe, so it's going to need the geometry setting up on it, which needs to go on that ramp there where that Mercedes is. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video. And that is one little Vauxhall Adam saved. Oh, and regarding the wing, that's bodywork, that's not my kind of thing. So yeah, anyway, let's get sent.